Recently, a report about the suspect in the White House Correspondents Dinner shooting case drew public attention. According to the report, the suspect, Cole Thomas Allen, had studied at the California Institute of Technology and had a background in engineering and computer science. He had worked as a teacher and game developer. At the same time, one neighbor said he may have had autism spectrum disorder, while a former high school teammate described him as almost a genius and very stable. Reports like this can easily link several words together in the public imagination: genius, autism, social isolation, danger, and violence. But this is exactly where we need to slow down. Whether a person committed a crime must be determined through facts, evidence, legal procedures, and proper psychological evaluation. Autism is not a universal explanation for violence, and it should never become a label that fuels public fear or stigma. Today, the Health Inquiry will use this news story as a starting point to talk seriously about several questions. What is autism spectrum disorder? What is Asperger's syndrome? Why can someone appear highly intelligent but still struggle deeply with social interaction? And why should we never equate autism with violence? 1. Autism is not just a strange personality. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a neurodevelopmental condition. It is associated with differences in brain development and function. Its core features usually include difficulties in social communication and social interaction, along with repetitive behaviors, intense or restricted interests, a strong preference for routines, and unusual responses to sensory input. The most important word here is spectrum. Spectrum means autism does not have just one face. Some autistic people have limited spoken language and need lifelong support. Others go to college, work, marry, raise families, and live independently, while still facing major difficulties in social understanding, emotional communication, and adapting to unpredictable environments. Some autistic people are quiet. Others talk a lot, but may struggle with conversational rhythm. Some are very sensitive to sound, light, smell, or touch. Others may have intense interests in numbers, machines, maps, coding, music, history, medicine, or very specific technical topics. So autism is not simply introversion. It is not deliberate rudeness. It is not a lack of emotion. Many autistic people have rich inner worlds. They may care deeply. They may feel intensely. But the way they understand and express emotions may differ from what most people expect. 2. What is Asperger's syndrome? Many people have heard the term Asperger's syndrome. In the past, this label was often used to describe people who had average or above average intelligence, relatively typical language development, but significant difficulties with social interaction, nonverbal communication, flexibility, and emotional understanding. In everyday language, people sometimes used terms like high-functioning autism or Asperger's to describe someone who could study, work, or speak fluently, but who found social rules confusing or exhausting. However, in modern diagnostic systems, Asperger's syndrome is no longer usually diagnosed as a separate condition. It has largely been included under the broader category of autism spectrum disorder. Why? Because real human lives do not fit neatly into boxes. A person may speak fluently but be overwhelmed by noise. Another may be highly intelligent but unable to manage office politics. Someone may seem only a little unusual in childhood, but later in adulthood realize that they have spent their entire life masking, imitating, and mentally calculating social behavior. Today, the focus is less on whether someone is high-functioning or low-functioning, and more on a better question. What kind of support does this person need in real life? 3. The core features of autism. Autism can be understood through three major dimensions. First, social communication differences. Some autistic children make little eye contact or do not respond consistently when their name is called. Some autistic adults may find it difficult to understand hints, jokes, sarcasm, facial expressions, or tone of voice. They may interpret language very literally. They may not know when to speak, when to pause, or how to keep a conversation flowing back and forth. This does not mean they do not want connection. It means the usual social signals that many people process automatically may require conscious effort for them. Second, repetitive behaviors and intense interests. Some autistic people prefer fixed routines, fixed routes, fixed foods, or fixed schedules. A sudden change in plans may cause intense anxiety. Some may repeat movements, words, or patterns. Some may focus deeply on a specific subject for years. Train systems, insects, programming languages, historical timelines, medical diagrams, aircraft, weather patterns, or countless other topics. These interests are not simply hobbies. They can be a source of comfort, identity, expertise, and emotional regulation. Third, sensory differences. Many autistic people experience the sensory world differently. A restaurant that seems merely noisy to one person may feel unbearable to someone on the spectrum. Fluorescent lights may flicker painfully. Clothing tags, sock seams, certain food textures, perfumes, or background sounds may create real distress. This is not being too sensitive. It reflects a different way of receiving, filtering, and integrating sensory information. 4. The myth of the autistic genius. News reports and movies often promote a familiar image. A person is brilliant at mathematics, computers, memory, or music, so people assume they must be autistic. This has created the stereotype of the autistic genius. Reality is much more complicated. Yes, some autistic people have extraordinary abilities in specific areas. Strong attention to detail, deep focus, pattern recognition, and comfort with rule-based systems can become strengths in science, engineering, music, art, data analysis, and other fields. But not all autistic people are geniuses. And not all geniuses are autistic. Romanticizing autism can be just as harmful as stigmatizing it. When autism is treated as a superpower, the daily struggles of ordinary autistic people may be ignored. When autism is treated as a threat, autistic people face fear, exclusion, and discrimination. An autistic child does not need to be a genius to deserve support. An autistic adult may perform well at work, but that does not mean they are not exhausted by social demands, sensory overload, anxiety, or the pressure to appear normal. 5. Autism and violence should not be equated. This is perhaps the most important point. Whenever a violent incident occurs, society often searches for a quick explanation. Was it mental illness? Was it autism? Was the person isolated? Was the person a disturbed genius? But science does not support the simple claim that autism causes violence. When violence occurs, many other factors may be involved. Untreated psychiatric conditions, psychosis, substance use, trauma, family environment, bullying, social isolation, access to weapons, ideology, or criminal intent. Autism itself is not a violence label. Of course, some autistic individuals, especially children or adolescents, may show aggressive behavior during extreme stress, sensory overload, communication breakdown, or emotional meltdown. But these behaviors are often signals of distress or loss of control, not planned malicious violence. Serious adult violence cannot be explained by saying, "He might have been autistic." Most autistic people are not dangerous. In fact, many are more likely to be misunderstood, bullied, exploited, or socially excluded. So when the media casually mentions autism in connection with violence, the public must be careful. A diagnosis, or even speculation about a diagnosis, should not become a shortcut for blame. 6. Why are some people diagnosed only in adulthood? For many years, public understanding of autism focused mainly on children, especially children with obvious language delay or visible behavioral differences. But many people with milder or more masked forms of autism are missed. As children, they may be called weird, too serious, not sociable, stubborn, or difficult. As adults, they may be described as emotionally awkward, low in emotional intelligence, rigid, or hard to work with. Some learn to imitate others. They study facial expressions. They rehearse conversations. They force eye contact. They memorize social rules. They appear normal in public, but collapse from exhaustion in private. This is often called masking. Women and girls on the spectrum may be especially likely to be missed because they may be better at copying social behavior or hiding their difficulties. For many adults, discovering that they may be on the autism spectrum is not about making excuses. It is about finally understanding their life. Why has social life always felt like solving a puzzle? Why are ordinary environments so exhausting? Why do other people seem to understand hidden rules that were never explained? Understanding is often the first step towards self-acceptance and support. 7. What can families and society do? For children, early recognition and support are important. Parents may consider professional evaluation if a child consistently does not respond to their name, shows limited social attention, has delayed language development, strongly resists changes in routine, or shows repetitive behaviors that affect daily life. But support should not stop in childhood. Autistic teenagers and adults also need understanding. Schools and workplaces can make a real difference by providing clearer rules, more predictable schedules, written instructions, quieter spaces, direct communication, and reasonable flexibility. In many cases, small environmental changes can greatly reduce distress. For the general public, 3 principles are especially important. First, do not casually diagnose people. Only qualified professionals can assess autism properly. Second, do not associate autism with danger, coldness, or violence. That stereotype is both inaccurate and harmful. Third, when you encounter different ways of communicating, show patience instead of ridicule. A person who avoids eye contact may still be listening. A person who speaks bluntly may not intend to offend. A person who needs routine may be trying to stay regulated, not trying to be difficult. 8. What should we really reflect on after this news story? The incident itself requires serious investigation. The source of weapons, possible security failures, motive, mental state, and social background. But one detail deserves caution. The claim that the suspect may have autism spectrum disorder appears to be a neighbor's speculation, not a confirmed medical diagnosis. Amplifying an unverified label does not explain the case, but it can harm millions of autistic people and their families. The deeper question is this. Why do we rush to explain extreme violence by searching for an abnormal personality? Why do we so easily imagine a smart but socially isolated person as potentially dangerous? Why do we know so little about neurodiversity, yet feel so ready to judge? Autism is not a trendy label. It is not a genius filter. It is not a footnote to crime. It is a real neurodevelopmental difference, lived by real people, children, students, coworkers, friends, partners, and family members. They may be awkward, but also sincere. They may be quiet, but also deeply emotional. They may need support, but also have remarkable strengths. They may see the world differently, but that does not make them less human. The best attitude toward autism is neither worship nor fear. It is understanding, respect, and evidence-based support. This is the health inquiry. Whenever we face a shocking news story, let us take one more step. From curiosity to understanding, from labels to facts, and from prejudice to science.